Nikolai Ivanovich Bukharin. He believed that religion, particularly Christianity, was outdated. He believed that people no longer needed ancient religious stories and moral teachings. Because, in his mind, government could represent the interests of the people so much better. He believed that by tightening the grip on churches and on Christians in the Soviet Union, that within a generation or so, religion would be dead. When I traveled to Russia back in the late 90s, I heard about this in a story from a woman who was living in a small town, very rural town, outside of Klin. If you know where Tchaikovsky's house was, that's where that is. But it's a small town outside of Klin. And this woman and her friend were helping out the priest in this very small Russian Orthodox church, just setting stuff up for worship. And she told me a story about how her grandmother had once heard Nikolai Bukharin in Kiev. And her mother at that time was very young. This is a long time back. But she was one of this new generation that had outgrown God. Decades had passed with the Soviet grip on life in Russia. And Nikolai gave a speech in Kiev explaining away Christianity as folklore, old stories that had no relevance anymore, and feeling very confident of the success of his program to eradicate religion. As a gesture of magnanimity, he decided to allow a former Ukrainian priest to have a few moments of rebuttal, a few minutes of rebuttal. And this former priest, complimented Nikolai on his eloquence, but declined the minutes that had been allotted to him. He simply turned to the crowd and said these words: "Christ is risen." And the crowd is following. He is risen indeed. One of the great strengths of Christian discipleship is that it brings hope, particularly to those people who are feeling crushed, who are feeling oppressed. The message of Jesus was and is good news to the poor of this world. It was and remains good news to those people who are enslaved in this world. Those who get no justice or can't afford justice. To those who remain in the grip of tyranny. And you can't kill hope. God knows people have tried. The Romans nailed Jesus to a cross. They stabbed him with a spear, and his body was placed in a tomb in a garden. He was dead. In our ancient story this morning, Mary of Magdala went to the tomb and found it empty. No body. So she went back to tell Peter and the disciple whom Jesus loved that someone had taken Jesus' body. And so two of them, they went and confirmed it. Because evidently, Mary's word wasn't quite good enough. You got to remember, this is a different time. Women didn't count. They literally didn't count. If you know those stories about when Jesus feeds all those thousands of people, it says men. And there were some other women there too, but they only count the men. But now Peter and the beloved disciple, they have seen the empty tomb, and well, now they believe Mary. She's not just confused. And they leave her at the tomb. And they go home to the place they were staying. At some point in the story, everyone assumes that some unknown party has come and removed Jesus' body.
Mary stood outside near the tomb, crying. As she cried, she bent down to look into the tomb. She saw two angels dressed in white, seated where the body of Jesus had been, one at the head and one at the foot. The angels asked her, "Woman, why are you crying?" She replied, "They have taken away my Lord, and I don't know where they put him." As soon as she had said this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there, but she didn't know it was Jesus. Jesus said to her, "Woman, why are you crying? Who were you looking for?" Thinking he was the gardener, she replied, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have put him, and I will get him." Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned and said to him in Aramaic, "Rabboni," which means teacher. Jesus said to her, "Don't hold on to me, for I haven't yet gone up to my Father. Go to my brothers and sisters and tell them, I'm going up to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Mary Magdalene left and announced to the disciples, "I've seen the Lord." Then she told them what he said to her.
This Russian woman and her friend at this church near Klein showed us around the church. They allowed us in, and it was small, very small church. For many decades, it had stood empty, just out in the middle of nowhere in Russia. It was just this plain with a little church sitting out in the middle of it. And the icons that were hanging there, these icons, the pictures of the saints, which are found in most Russian Orthodox churches, they had reappeared recently, in recent years, after having been hidden. And here's what happened. She explained that when Christianity had become officially outlawed, they made an allowance that grandmothers, babushka, could continue to practice their faith, but only babushka. The government figured that once all the grandmas had died, that since there were no priests, the religion would just die. It would only last a few more years. They made a crucial miscalculation. Don't count the women out. The beloved disciple and Peter left. They weren't sure what had gone on. It was to Mary that Jesus appeared. And even though that minute she thought that he was the gardener, Mary got left behind because the guys had to go home and figure out what had happened. But I think something clicked inside of Mary the moment that Jesus says her name, and she replies, "Rabboni." I think in that moment, she didn't just recognize who Jesus was. She recognized who she was. She recognizes that she herself is a disciple. She's not just an add-on, a follower to the guys. And no matter what the misogynistic world says, she counts as much as a full disciple as Peter and the beloved disciple. Now there is a power from being in a group. There's no doubt. If you've ever been on a team, you know that feeling. And we've witnessed this. How about this? Come with me now. Let's go Royals. Let's go Royals. We had a whole city of 1 million people clapping that downtown. There's power in that. There is a power that comes from hearing a group speak and proclaim their faith. Christ is risen. There you go. But there is also power that God puts inside of you. Just you. That calls you to do something incredible with your life. That calls you to be more than you ever thought you could be. When Nikolai Bukharin heard that crowd respond, he had to know that at some level, the faith that he tried so hard to crush could not be killed. That had power. You know what also has power? That grandmother. That babushka in the crowd, she had power too. And something clicked inside of her. She claimed a mission to carry on secretly storing those iconium, those pictures, under the floor of her home. She passed them on to her daughter. And her daughter passed them on to her daughter. Until the day came when they could be displayed again. For each woman, it was a personal decision to claim, to risk a personal claim as a Christian disciple. And I was honored with those women to hear their story, because they changed the world in a little church outside of Cleveland. When Mary got back to the men who were in hiding, she didn't say, Christ is risen. It was personal. It wasn't passive. It was powerful. I've seen the Lord. Me, she's seen the Lord. She claims her role as an apostle to the apostles. Resurrection for her woke a new sense of passionate purpose, and it changed her. And that's the thing. What this day means isn't just a thing that we do together, because at some points, the meaning behind this day gets personal, life-changing. Whatever this day means to you today, whatever resurrection means to you, whether it's confusing to you, it's confusing to me, what you claim about this day, that's your witness. That's your ministry. That's what calls you to be a disciple. Resurrection calls you to a life that's worth living. And maybe it's about some of you claiming your new life after the death of a spouse or after a divorce. Maybe for you, it's about daring to speak up for those who are being put down and crushed. Maybe it's about quitting doing the thing in your own life that's killing you. You know what that is. Never count yourself out, because God certainly doesn't. Never let anyone tell you that you are less than. Easter is bigger than any bigotry. You are a beloved disciple of Jesus Christ. And that love that God put inside you, that call that's inside of your heart, that you're called to do something incredible, I believe in that. And I find a great deal of good news and hope for the world in that faith. So may God bless you, and may something click inside of you